Good evening, everyone. I, CA Ritu Agarwal, on behalf of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee (ICI), welcomes all the participants in today's webcast. Say more with less and make it count every time. A very warm welcome to each one of you joining us virtually for this important session. We are deeply honored to have with us today's respected Central Council member and dynamic chairman of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee, CA Jay Chaira sir, and our vice chairman of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee, CA Abhay Chadid sir. I welcome to our today's resource person, CA Pariniti Adukia ma'am, and our participants present over here. First of all, I request Chairman Sir to address our audience and formally start the session.
Very good evening to all of you. Our today's learned speaker, CA Pariniti Adukia, moderator CA Ritu Agrawal, the backbone of our committee, secretary of the committee, Dr. Sambit Kumar Mishra ji, and my dear friends. Once again, a very good evening. And Professional Skills Enrichment Committee has started a webinar series on various topics related to professional skills. Each and every topic covers a particular skill which each and every chartered accountant should improve upon, should inculcate such type of values, develop such type of skills. Why only chartered accountant? Actually, every human being is required to be, but of course, chartered accountants have to be much more better in these things. And as many times I say that chartered accountants, if they are good in income tax, should they not be good equally in communication? If they are excellent in audit, should they not be excellent in persuasion? Right? Now, these are very important skills because if you have technical skills, but you lack such type of presentation, communication, persuasion, then you don't create that impact. Then you don't create an impact. And if you go through the management theory, it always says that your technical skills will help you to enter, to penetrate, and that also at lower level. Right? If you really want to elevate, and I think every human being, every chartered accountant wants to do that, then you require other skills. And these are the skills which are being taken care of by the Professional Skills Enrichment Committee. I think we have planned out 100 webinars on all the various skills so that every chartered accountant can choose which skill he has to develop. And we have selected eminent speakers for that. My view is that why to select, why not to go with all the programs? Right? When you are getting wonderful speakers across the country, when the committee is choosing, हर एक जो टॉपिक है, पर आज जो टॉपिक्स जो हमारे हैं, जितने भी टॉपिक्स एक्चुअली ये शबरी के बैर जैसे एक एक चुन चुन के रखे हुए हैं. And same is the case with speakers. So when sitting at your home, you can get the benefit of 100 good speakers across the country, 100 good topics which are going to enhance you, So everybody should take the advantage of that. Today, the topic is quite interesting. Convey more or communicate more with less words. That is the theme. It's very, very essential. Long narrations and explanations many times, may not be that impactful. Rather, if you convey the same with a fewer words. Like I remember I was in Finland and I was told in Finland that our education has a simple concept, less is more. And I came to know while I was moving there that the children here are very happy. The schools run for very less number of hours, but they are considered the best in Europe. So less is more is beautiful. Less is more is beautiful. And that comes to communication also. And see, communication is not about very, 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 very long words. Rather, experts like Pariniti would agree with me that 90% of the communication is other than words. Your dressing, your gesture, your posture, your smile, right? Your vibrations that you emit, they convey a lot, right? They convey. I'm sitting here at ICAI. The logo behind me conveys that, right? That communicates. Everything communicates. So communication is not about words. थोड़ा सा रोमांटिक बात करें अगर, अलाउड है चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स को अलाउड है, तो वो है ना, इशारों इशारों में दिल लेने वाले, बताइए हुनर तूने सीखा कहां से, राइट? निगाहों निगाहों में जादू चलाना, मेरी जान तूने सीखा जहां से. So the thing is that how with your expressions, how with your eyes, how with your energy, how with your posture, gesture, body language, how do you communicate? How do you make it sure that there is positivity in the environment and you communicate to the other person? He understands it the way you say. Now, that is very important. You may communicate one thing and the other person may perceive it differently. So, how do you ensure? So, if you have very, very, very long generations, first is people will lose the interest. And in today's world, where attention span is getting very smaller and smaller, lower, thanks to the social media, right? The Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and all these things is reducing the attention span. Too much of knowledge, an ocean of knowledge, wanted, unwanted, warranted, unwarranted, all the things bombarded from all the sides. So attention span is going down. At that point of time, how to become short and sweet so that the other person first is willing to listen to you. Second, he understands it the way you want it, right? The way you convey. So how to convey so that he understands. So that means understanding his background, understanding his aspirations, and conveying in such a way that he takes it that way, or rather is delighted to take it that way. This is a very, very important art for any professional, right? Your communication with your clients, communication with your subordinates, if you are working in corporate, communication with your colleagues, with your team, or even with your superior. It's very, very important that you learn these things. And I know very well that even if you go to these schools, more than technical subjects, communication sessions have high value programs, right? The sessions. Somehow I don't know why it is so that when it comes to communication, all these things, we take it on a very lighter, we take it in a very light way. It's a very, very crucial thing, and I'm sure our today's speaker is going to throw more light on this. Friends, the committee shall keep on organizing more and more such type of webinars. If you would like to be a speaker or would like to suggest any name as a speaker or suggest any topic as a speaker, please come to us. We are sure to see to it that if we have some good topics, good speakers, we'll be very happy to provide the platform of this committee so that more and more chartered accountants can take the advantage of that. Back to Ritu. Thanks a lot, friends. And I hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting tone for today's session. Now I take the opportunity to introduce our today's speaker. CA Pariniti Adukia ma'am, an ambitious individual who spent 6 years in finance before branching out to seek new opportunities. In 2015, she founded Portraiture to explore an area where she could make a difference. She is the strategy head and chief consultant in all their branding projects. She is founder of LinkedIn Top Personal Branding Voice with over 18,000 target connections and 1.2 million posts views in a year. With this, I request Pariniti ma'am to take charge.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ritu, for fine-tuning my introduction and taking out information even from the social media. So thank you so much. Okay. As usual, thank you so much, Jay sir, Even if it's even for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure listening to you. And the kind of insights that you give, you always are like the best opening batsman a speaker can have because आप जो pointers छोड़ते जाते हो ना, it's really audience के लिए तो बहुत help होता है, but it also helps the speaker a lot in the terms of what might the audience be expecting and how to fine tune what we are going to say and how to include the very important aspects about few topics. So thank you so much, Jay sir. Thank you so much, Samit sir, for giving this opportunity and the Professional Skill Enhancement Committee for taking up this topic, which is very important, but also, I'll say, very tricky for chartered accountants because communication हमने ज़्यादा कभी सीखा ही नहीं है. Because we are always behind this laptop working and numbers and this and that. Our communication is only कि काम हो गया, कितना हुआ, कैसा है, that's it. But there are a lot of important aspects as a CA that you need to consider and understand that communication, like even Jay sir said, is the base of your growth. You cannot rely on your technical skills through your life to grow as a chartered accountant. Communication skills will remain the main aspect of your growth. Technical skill will actually come afterwards. So this idea that technical skills is higher than communication skills, I think we need to come out of this whole concept and consider the communication skill is more important than technical skill because unless you communicate how good you are technically, you won't be able to really benefit out of the technical knowledge that you have. Okay. So on that note, let's start with the session. I'm going to share the screen. Now, couple of things. One, I have a severe cold, so please bear with me. Second, this communication. So I understand this is a webinar sort of format. यहाँ पे communication is always a two-way thing, but this particular format is a one-way thing. Still, because it is communication, we will be talking about action things, what you actually need to do. So there will be action plans and case studies that I'll be giving you, which you need to solve. And you need to come out with solutions. Of course, I will be able to get the answers only at the end, but I would really love that you sit and retrospect each thing that is being said, each case study that is being discussed. Okay, that is how you will actually understand the nitty-gritties and the concepts that we are going to discuss. I'll be keeping the session very simple. Only three main aspects we will be discussing. In these three main aspects, we will be discussing various case studies so that you get the concept really clear. Okay, I won't be bombarding you with technical knowledge or technical know-how of communication. Yeah, ye theory, wo theory. No, we will only be discussing on-ground reality examples, very on the point solution that you can do and what you can actually do to communicate better. Okay, everybody with me? On that note, I am sharing the screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Perfect. Okay, let's move forward. So speak more with less and make it count every time. And the idea of this topic is how can you communicate effectively with both your clients and your team? Now, I know maximum CAs are more worried about their communication. How do I improve my communication with my clients? How do I, ask for more fees or ask for better work or get my documents on time? Or how do I, talk to clients about some notice or this and that? But communication with your team members is as important, in fact, more important than communication with your clients. Because team ही नहीं होगी तो काम कैसे होगा? And they are the base of, they are managing the foundation of your firm, remember. So communicating with your team is as important as learning how to communicate with your clients. So which is why through the session, we will be including both concepts about how do you really communicate well with your clients as well as how do you communicate well with your teams. Okay. Let's move forward. So, this particular question I've asked at a lot of my sessions, not necessarily it was a communication session, different topics also. But whenever I ask this question, who is a chartered accountant? A very common answer that I get is CA is a service provider. Of course, CA is a service provider, and so we are providing services like auditing, accounting, taxation, which means we give some kind of a service to a client, right? A professional service, correct? Okay. Now hold this thought, and I will come back to this question later. And why this question and the answer to this question is so important, and how can we change this answer? And why is it important to change this answer that we give of who is a chartered accountant? Okay. थोड़ा सा confusion हो रहा है कि communication session में क्यों आया? We'll get to that. Now, why does communication matter for chartered accountants? Of course, Jay sir has already given a kind of a base as to communication is important for chartered accountants. Uh, even for your growth, yes, for communicating with different stakeholders. But what does a good communication really get you? When you are communicating, or what is the end result of communicating well? Let's look at that. Now, what happens is, like, even I said before that we or CAs are always surrounded with numbers. Ye number, wo number, ye projection, balance sheet, P&L, ye reports and everything. But communicating is not कि मुझे for example, if a client asks कि आप मुझे बैलेंस शीट बना के दे दो, मैंने अपना काम किया, बैलेंस शीट उठा के दे दिया. It's not, communicating is not just handing over the balance sheet, be it a soft copy, hard copy, to the client. No. Communication is much deeper than that. Communication is about building a trust. It starts with trust. Now, the first step that the person gave you his accounts to really make the balance sheet is because the person trusts you. A good communication helps enhance the trust. Okay. So, for example, with that balance sheet, if there are some queries, you find there are some gaps. If you communicate well, okay, you're not inquiring or you're not being very, very nudgy about it, बहुत खोद नहीं रहे हो, the client will trust you more. The way you communicate, the way you ask questions, that will enhance the client's trust towards you more. Okay. Second step, now, the clarity of communicating is not how beautifully the balance sheet was presented. Okay. कि अरे कितना neat and clean है, all the numbers are in place, alignment है, it's segregated well. No. That's, of course, a very important aspect, but clarity is also about clearly putting out whatever gaps that you observe. What was the take back, or what was the projection? How does it impact? When you clearly communicate all these factors to the client is the important aspect of communication. And last but not the least is the way you influence the person. Now, say example, you saw the balance sheet and you made the balance sheet. Now you feel after creating the balance sheet, the projection is really good. On that projection base, you can influence the client to diversify their business. That's communication. That's effective communication. So influence means through your communication, when you are able to put forward your thought so clearly that you're able to influence the other person's path, their decision is the power of communication. And as a CA, it is not about just doing some work. Okay. It is about gaining the trust of the client with clarity, getting all the data together, communicating that data to the client, and also then influencing the client to take a better decision or to come up with some solution. That's communication. And which is why communication is very, very essential for a CA. Now, again, let's not only talk about clients. The way you communicate with your team. See, as a CA, you interact with a lot of different stakeholders. Okay. So communication will help you with a good, effective communication will help you not only with clients, but say your team members, the way you gain their trust, the way you clearly set goals for them or align responsibilities to them and then influence them to become a better team leader. That's communication. Say you are also interacting with people like income tax authority. So again, when you are appearing before income tax authority, you need to gain their trust to show that you are a professional and educated well enough to represent the client. You need to be very, very clear with your communication in how you are putting forward the case and also then influencing, okay, not directly, but indirectly through your effective communication. Of course, the end result you want it, the income tax authority comes up with a notice which is in favor to the client, right? That is, if you are effectively communicating, you will influence the income tax authority to really come up with a favorable notice, right? So communication will not only help you with your clients, but different stakeholders. And the thing about communication is, and this is something that we will be discussing a lot in detail later as well, each stakeholder expects a different style of communication. क्लाइंट से आप कैसे बात करते हो, टीम मेंबर से कैसे बात करते हो, अथॉरिटी से कैसे बात करते हो, it will require a different style of communication. You cannot be the same with each one of them. Okay, it's not about having multi dimensional personality. It's not about that. ऐसा नहीं कि split personality हो रहा है, but it is the way you are talking to people. Simple है. The way you talk to your wife cannot be the same the way you talk to your daughter or your sister, or the way you talk to your neighbors cannot be the same the way you talk to your parents. It's very different. In the same way, the way you communicate with your clients cannot be the same the way you communicate with the team or the authorities. Okay. And this is what we learn, of course. Now, let's understand few of the very common struggles that CAs have, okay, when we are communicating. So, explaining technical concepts. Now, one of the very, very difficult the biggest struggle that I've seen, and so I'm not a practicing CA, okay, I have been a communications trainer and a branding personality for 9 years now. I am not into practice. So what happens is, I'll tell you some very on-ground reality as a third person. Okay, I'm not referring myself as a CA now. As a third person, I was attending some networking event where, of course, there were a lot of a non-ICI event. Okay. So there was a mixed of crowd of CAs, business owners, and of course, other people as well. Now, I saw a few CAs introducing themselves and trying to explain their work to some business owners and to some very uh, non-CA professionals. Okay, I think there were few doctors and few those kind of professionals. So I remember the person was the CA was into internal audit, okay, and some system audit. Now, understand the perspective of the business owner and the non-CA professional, the doctor. Okay, and we three audience were standing, and the CA was trying to explain the work, which included a lot of technical concepts to a non-technical person. Here, I'm considering myself as a half technical person because I'm not into practice anymore. So there are a lot of things I might not know. And trust me, when the CA was trying to explain what work he does, we couldn't understand. This is a common challenge because when you are so much into your work, your everyday work as a CA, you are, of course, communicating maximum with your team members, with your partners, where your communication is into technical lines. You use technical words very often. You are communicating in such a language that your partner or your team member will understand because it includes a lot of technicalities. But understand that the opposite person might not always be technically as sound as you or comes from the same industry or work experience. So this is one of the biggest challenge when a CA wants to or has to explain technical concepts to a non-technical person. And it's not even about non-technical person. Say you are at a partner level, having an experience of 20 years into system audits. You have to explain some work to a fresher who has just entered the industry. How will you explain such high level technical concepts to a fresher? That is also a big, big gap in the way you are explaining. So, how you communicate these technical concepts also become very, very important. Be it to your client, to your potential clients who are non-technical people, to your team members who might be very junior in the terms of experience in a particular field. All this matters. Okay. Handling difficult clients. I think this is one of the biggest asks or challenge of a chartered accountant. How do I handle difficult clients? Some clients are very aggressive. Some clients are very, very dormant. दिन तक reply नहीं करते, गायब हो जाते हैं, फिर अचानक से उठ के आके बोलेंगे कि हमारा काम कर दो. Some clients you want to negotiate for a better fees, or some clients you want to push for better service. Handling difficult clients, I think not even for a CA, for any service providers is one of the biggest challenges. But again, the way you communicate, the way you put forward your points will help you overcome this challenge because at the end, clients also have a point of view. We just need to understand that. Okay. The next thing that we understand is the challenge that CAs often face and which we all are aware. I think, again, any business owner, any service provider who has a team will understand that managing a team is one of the biggest challenges. And the biggest challenge amongst that is delegating the work. How do you really delegate the work? How do you understand each team member's potential so you can really allocate the best work or the right work to the team member? All this really will be defined by your clear and open communication. So that is also one of the biggest challenge. But of course, we will see how can you really manage your team through effective communication. And of course, not all communication is verbal. There are written communication as well. The understand the basic basis or the basics of communication remain the same whether it's verbal or written. Of course, when it's uh, verbal. So let's divide it into three parts. It's verbal plus face to face. Second is verbal over a call, and third is written. Okay. How do you divide all these three and why these three communication styles are different? See, understand when you are verbally speaking to a person and the person is face to face with you have a better hand at it because you can understand the non-verbal cues like the how the person is reacting. You can react in a better manner. The person can understand you better because that person can feel again, see your face expressions, your body language, your hand expressions, everything. All this combined when verbal communication is combined with all the non-verbal cues, the communication is always better. Then comes over a phone. Now, over a phone call, you might not be able to see the person clearly, but what you can actually understand is the tone of the voice. Okay, at least that non-verbal communication is still there with you when you are talking over a phone. And the last is written when only the words can really play the whole game. There is no facial expression, there's no tone or voice in the picture. So, we always say if you have a fight with anybody and that person is really important, first try to meet the person face to face and have a communication. If that's not possible, then get over a call. The last resort should always be message. But આજકલ it's become very ulta. Everybody wants to just type a quick WhatsApp message and things get really bad after a WhatsApp message because the opposite person can really not feel if you're actually sorry. Your words, the written words might come out wrong. The person, how the person is reading is not in your hands always. So please follow this method. Always remember it's not only about a fight. That's just something very important. But whenever you want to communicate something very, very important, the hierarchy should be first, a face to face conversation, second, a phone call, and the third is WhatsApp message. So, अगर face to face भी नहीं मिल सकते, always try for a Zoom call. So, this is something that I follow with all my clients. I always prefer a Zoom call over a phone call to talk to my clients because that gives me an edge. I can understand the clients better. I can express myself better. I can read the non-verbal cues of the clients better. And see, we all are humans, so we want that human touch with each other. So Zoom calls or video calls always work better than the phone call and then the WhatsApp message. Okay, always remember this. Okay, whether you want to give an important feedback, whether you want to connect with a potential client, always try for a Zoom call because face to face also helps you gain the trust. Once the person sees you, okay, this person looks like this. Remember, this is your brand, and this is the biggest factor to gain trust. So always go for a physical meeting or a video meeting. Okay. So be it a potential client, आपको feedback दे रहा है, आपको अपने team के साथ connect करना है. So for example, today a lot of your team members are also sitting virtually. They're working virtually, either work from home or some other city. So make it a point that from time to time you have video calls with them. Again, it enhances your rapport and it enhances your way of communication. Okay. So just a request, Ritu, if any questions are particularly coming in, if you
Yes,
feel
ma'am.
that's very important for the line of conversation that we are having, please do let me know. Otherwise, all the common questions, we can take it over the end.
Okay, ma'am. No problem.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so how the session will go is we have three main divisions of the session. The first is active listening and what active listening really means, how does it really help in enhancing your communication, and how does it really help in building that trust that is required to work with a client or any person. Okay. The second is the clarity point. Remember, so there are trust, clarity. So clarity is when you break down a complex situation and structure it properly. When there is a lot of important information to be given, how do you really structure a very difficult conversation that you want to have with a person, so that whatever you want to say comes out with a lot of clarity. So that is something that we will work upon. Again, there is a framework that I will be giving you, and you need to follow that. And the last is the influence. How do you adapt to different stakeholders? How do you adapt and change your conversation style with each stakeholder so you can influence the person? So if you see the three basic aspects of communication, that is trust, clarity, and influence. How do you tackle these three, and how do you master these three aspects of a communication as a CA? Okay, and come out as a better communicator. Perfect. Now, what again, like I said, mentioned before, we will be discussing case studies because मुझे theory नहीं समझाना है. It will really not help you anyway. So, what I will be doing is we will be understanding the concept. We will be seeing a couple of case studies. Then I will be giving you a few case studies to solve. When we will be doing that, I will give you some time to solve that. Keep the answers ready. And at the end, if you find it difficult to solve any particular case study, point it out. I will help you solve that. Okay. But I won't be able to solve all the case studies because we don't have that much of time. I will be giving you time to really introspect on that question, solve that on the paper. And then we will, if you have any doubt on any particular case study, please get back to me. I will solve it. Okay. Now, let's come to the first aspect of activism. What is the biggest mistake when we talk about communication? What is the biggest mistake that a CA can do? It's talking. You will be confused, right? कि communication है, तो talking तो आएगा ही. But let's see why this is a mistake. Say, suppose a client comes to you and says, please look into my filing ना 25-26 का मतलब एडवांस टैक्स भरना है, या तो फिर 24-25 का प्लीज मेरा टैक्स फाइलिंग का कर दो. What will your response be? What is your response? On a general note, what will your response be? Haha, we'll do it, don't worry. Correct? The biggest mistake is that. Coming to the first question, you remember we had asked, who is a CA? Don't be a service provider. Be a value generator. Now, before we move forward, I'll share some things with you because I have a lot of CAs as my clients. And one of the biggest fear or, challenge, fear and challenge बहुत different होता है, but still challenge ये है कि they are not able to crack clients. And fear ये है कि अगर if I'm not able to crack clients, how will I grow? ये क्यों होता है is because you consider yourself as a service provider. You do not consider yourself as a value creator कि मैं अपने clients के लिए value लाके दे रहा हूँ और दे रही हूँ. You don't think yourself as that, and neither does the client look at you as somebody who can be a value generator for them. ये क्यों होता है? ये मैंने बहुत देखा है. ओके, क्लाइंट्स नहीं मिल रहे हैं मुझे, आई एम नॉट एबल टू क्रैक क्लाइंट्स, और आई एम नॉट एबल टू गेट हाई टिकट क्लाइंट्स, और मैं करंट क्लाइंट तो मेरे पास सिर्फ आईटीआर भरने के लिए आता है. क्यों आता है, क्यों होता है? लेट्स लुक एट दैट. डोंट स्पीक मोर, लिसन. सुनो लोगों की पहले. जब when clients come to you bus to get that work, what will you do is, haha sir, we'll do it, don't worry. But do you really look for opportunity there? Do you really dig in and see what the client actually wants, or what is more, कभी क्या होता है, there's a very beautiful video that I've seen. I wish it clicked me earlier so I could have showed you that video. There is a video where there are two people. One is, both are digging into the soil. Okay. And we as an audience can see नीचे ना दोनों के यहाँ पे डायमंड्स हैं. Now the first person थोड़ा dig करता है 3-4 times. He doesn't find any diamond. He loses hope and he's like, छोड़ यार, एक डायमंड हाथ में आता है, वो खुश होके चला जाता है. The second person also gets one diamond. Once he's digging like 3-4 times he dug, he got one diamond. Then he didn't stop. He dug more, did a lot of hard work, and at the end he got a bunch of diamonds. The thing is, we look for short-term gains. कि अरे ठीक है, क्लाइंट आ गया, चलो एक क्लाम बोला ना, चलो करके दे. But when you listen more is when you can really find opportunities with the clients. Okay. Now this means when you speak more, you are in a hurry to provide the service. Okay. But when you listen more, you get to the base of the problem and you can really add value in true sense. This might look a bit tricky now. Let's see and look at some examples. क्या होता है जब आप खाली हाँ सर, यस सर पे चलते हो? The person looks at you as a expense कि यार सीए को पे करना है मुझे. As a client, think from their perspective. When you are filing their ITR, उनको ऐसा लगता है यार सिर्फ ITR बनाया है, या तो एक प्रोजेक्शन रिपोर्ट बना के दे दिया है, इसका 20,000-30,000 ले लिया, यार ये तो एक्सपेंस हो गया मेरे. Okay, that person thinks that, oh my God, I have to pay that person 20,000, 30,000. Okay. The problem is that person looks at you as an expense, as somebody who's asking for money. But when you change your perspective from a person who asks money to somebody who will help you generate more revenue by giving you a solution, that money won't hurt or won't pinch the person. And that comes when you can really add value to that person. और वो वैल्यू आप तभी दे पाओगे जब आप उसको अच्छे से समझ पाओ. ऊपर से काम करके कुछ नहीं हो. When you dig deeper is when you get the real diamond, right? So that is what you need to do. You need to change the perspective of a CA from a service provider to somebody who is a solution provider, to somebody who really adds value, and to somebody who is growth enabler to your company or to your growth as a business owner. That is when you will actually get the best value and the best money out of the client. ये कैसे होता है? Let's look at that. Okay. Again, what is your first reaction Suppose Abhi, let's go into case studies. So what we'll do is we'll be discussing few case studies, and I want you to introspect. I am not giving you answers because that's not how communication really works. Okay. What we'll be doing is I will be discussing some case studies. Pehle we'll discuss the outcomes. Then I will be giving you some case studies for you to introspect. Okay. Suppose a client comes and says, I'm really worried about my tax implications. ठीक है क्या टैक्स भरना आएगा आई एम रियली स्ट्रेस्ड इस टाइम तो आई थिंक माय इनकम that person just says कि I'm really worried about my tax. What will your first reaction be? Remember, the first reaction is the main, it's the game killer or game puller. ठीक है? Normally, the first reaction is, and this is again a common observation, अरे सर डोंट वरी we'll handle it. कर लेंगे मैनेज सर, टेंशन क्यों ले रहे हो, हम है ना. Right? But is this the right reaction? आपको लग रहा होगा कि when I say this, I am coming out as an authority. I know everything. Don't worry, sir. हम है ना, हमें सब पता है. We'll give you the best service. You need not worry. You might come out as a person कि you think that you are projecting yourself as an expert. But no. Projecting as an expert is fine, but at the same time, you are losing on a lot of things. You are losing on a chance to connect with the client. You are losing on a chance to upsell the client. You are losing on a chance to gain more value or to show the person that we don't do only the small things. We can really become your support in your growth. So never, ever, ever. This is, remember, ये आप एक क्या बोलते हैं क्या बोलते हैं the last this has to be your मूल mantra, right? This has to be your मूल mantra. Never ever give the final output or the solution at one go to the client. Never. उसके लिए क्या करना है? Ask questions. This is something again CAs are not used to. They are not used to asking questions or really having conversations. So again, I was sitting with one of the clients who is a good CA firm, and we were discussing on some trainings on communication, कि कौन सा communication topics लेना है. And the HR over there pointed out कि ma'am, please work with them on having conversations with people. We are, as a CA, we are so stuck with providing service. Compliances में इतने फंस जाते हैं, numbers में इतने फंस जाते हैं that we don't have an extended conversation. Our answers and questions are always, did you do this? Yes. हाँ, कैसा हुआ? ठीक हो गया. Balance sheet tally हो गई? हाँ, हो गई. Report चला गया? हाँ, चला. So, questions and answers are always question, one word answer, question, one word answer. There is no communication or conversation happening, which really gives out some output. Client के साथ भी यही हो रहा है. The client comes out with some work. You say हो जाएगा. You have some queries or a list of documentation required. आप वो list email कर दोगे या phone कर दोगे. मैंने आपको email किया है list, please भेज दो. भेज दिया, काम हुआ, खत्म, दे दिया, submit कर. That's the kind of whole conversation that happens with the client. But that cannot be it. You have to really ask questions. Now, let's go back to this. Suppose a client comes and says, I'm really worried about my tax. क्या होने वाला है इस साल? Ask. Can you share what makes you feel that way? What happened? Is it something related to your income? Okay, first, Give them the opportunity to answer themselves. So first, keep it a very open-ended question. We'll come to what open-ended question is. First, ask a question जहाँ पे आपको detailed answer मिल सके. Okay, and that is what a open-ended question is. Open-ended question means questions which helps the person think in detail, where the answers are more detailed. ठीक है? So when you ask those questions, say, okay, I understand. So what is making you feel that? Let the person answer. If that person is not able to answer correctly, or you feel no, there is something more, then start asking questions. Don't imply things. Ask questions. Okay, so is this something related to extra income that you must have got? Or is there some very exorbitant expenditure? कुछ बहुत बड़ा आपने कुछ खर्चा कर दिया है जो शायद business expense नहीं है? Were there any transfers which you are worried about? What is the question? Or were there any documentation missing? आपको लग रहा है कि हाँ कुछ documents missing है. What is worrying you? Now, why this is important? Say you keep asking these questions, and while answering, you feel, okay, the documentation is not in place. As a CA, remember, there are many value-added services that you can provide. Talk to them. Okay, so, this is something that you come up as a CA. Okay, so, what I've observed is even last year, there was some issue with the documentation. What we can do is, this is something that I really, really suggest. Work on your automation, and I can help you with that. Yeah, we can automate your whole documentation process. We can also train your team on how to maintain that document so that ये जो आपको stress बार-बार हो रहा है, that does not happen. You can work on the systems, you can work on the internal controls, so many things extra that you can provide. So when, this is something that I keep telling my clients also. One client, try to add more services to that client itself. Because तो वो client already है, वो client आपको already trust कर रहा है. Okay, वो client already आपका services जानता है. As in the quality of service जानता है. But आप इसको upsell कैसे कर पाओगे? Upselling means when the client is taking one service, then you try to pitch in other kind of services also to the client. How you can do it is by asking questions, by coming up with solutions, by probing into things and giving them facts. तो जब तक आप conversations नहीं करोगे, जब तक आप communication नहीं करोगे, you won't be able to come up with these aspects. Okay? I hope I'm clear. Asking questions is the key to active listening. है ना? थोड़ा सा उल्टा हुआ जो मैंने बोला कि don't speak much. जैसे सर ने बोला, remember what Jay sir said? Less is more. Less यहाँ पे does not mean do not speak at all. Speaking the right thing, asking the right question is the most important aspect of good communication. So when you do that, when you ask the right questions, the clients feel heard and they feel valued. कि, एक experience मैं आपको बताती हूँ. Very recently, I took somebody, a relative of mine to a doctor. The doctor was a known family person, my family person. So I took my other relatives, to that doctor. Once the whole session with the doctor was done and I was sitting there, you know what beautiful thing that the patient told me? I loved the doctor because that doctor really, so that I just give you a brief background, that patient had visited few doctors and was not satisfied. She was not getting the right treatment and she was in a lot of pain. You know what the patient said? I really loved the doctor because the doctor listened to me. The doctor asked me questions, sahi questions पूछे, was not in a hurry, and I really felt good कि that doctor really cares for me. So, when you ask the right questions, when you ask, when you listen more than speaking, the opposite person gets the feeling that this person cares about what I am going through, what my queries are, what my fears are, and that person really wants to give something to you, right? The client will always also feel the same way. So the clients feel heard and valued. The team members, again, this is something when you are at a position where you are constantly giving work to people, you come into that zone ki, say you get a project. आप क्या करते हो? आप अपने एक जूनियर को बुलाओगे, बोलोगे, अच्छा ये क्लाइंट आया है, इसको ऐसा ऐसा काम चाहिए, ये इसके डॉक्यूमेंट्स है, ये लेके जाओ और ये काम करके ले आओ. Where is the communication? It is a one-way conversation. It's a one-way communication. Conversation तो हुआ ही नहीं. Now, what happens is when there is so much of one-way communication with the team members, especially this I'm talking about people who are at a junior level, that person at a junior level does not feel empowered, does not feel responsible for the work. उसको हमेशा क्या लगेगा कि यार इसका काम है मुझे करके देना. That feeling कि this is not my work, this is my senior's work जो मैं करके दे रहा हूँ. This is my partner's work जो मैं करके दे रहा हूँ. That person, that team member will never ever feel accountable or responsible for the work because there was always a one-way communication. So in this, चलो the same example लेते हैं case study. आपके पास कोई client का काम आया, आप क्या करो? Let's change it. आप वो टीम मेंबर को बुलाओ, उसको बैठाओ, उसको केस स्टडी वो पेपर्स दो, बोलो कि ये क्लाइंट का नाम है. नाउ ask questions. Have you ever worked in such a on such a client? Okay. Now ये client का ना ये particular query था. आपका क्या राय है? Ask. सही है, गलत है, secondary है. Let the person at least think. Okay. Now, when do you think you will be able to complete this work? Instead of giving a timeline, ask for a timeline. This will also help you gauge कि वो team member कितना capable है. Okay, and decision making power उस team member में कितना है. Once that person knows कि अच्छा ये मेरा काम है, I have come out with so many points, that team member takes that client work as his own and works on the client with full sincerity and accountability. And that is why it is very important to empower your team member. और वो तभी होगा when you ask questions and when you let the person answer and you listen to the person. Okay, so team members, remember, as a senior, you don't only have to speak or guide, also have to listen a lot. Okay. It's important to ask questions to authorities also when you are, say, going to represent a case. आप आपके जाके सीधा बोलना चालू कर दिया, पट 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 खत्म कर. No. Whenever opportunity is given, give me 1 second. Huh? Whenever opportunity arises, when you ask question to the authority, that authority again will feel that you are responsible and you really genuinely care about the case and you really want to solve the case. Okay. So asking questions is never a bad thing. Remember, even to your seniors, it's very important to keep asking questions because that shows your sincerity and the level of accountability you want to have. वो टीचर क्लास में बोलती है ना कि क्वेश्चंस पूछो, और जो बच्चा क्वेश्चन पूछता है, which means that person really wants to learn. The same way, when you ask questions to your clients, to your team members, to authority, it shows you are genuinely interested and you genuinely want to learn something about the person or the situation. So ask questions. अब ये questions होते क्या है? Open-ended questions are something that helps people dig into the situation more. Okay. So, what challenges have you faced in the past when you tried to solve the same problem? Let the person answer. उनसे मत पूछो कि अच्छा आपने ऐसा किया था इसलिए ये क्वेरी आया. Don't give them pointers. Ask for pointers. What are the top business priorities do you have right now? Say for example, somebody comes and tells you कि प्लीज मेरा ये एक कैश फ्लो प्रोजेक्शन बना दो मुझे बैंक में सबमिट कर. यस सर बना देंगे. इंस्टेड आस्क what is your business priority, what is the outcome you wish to gain from this, what is your 5-year goal, so that you can create a better projection. Okay, what's the biggest obstacle you have encountered? Say for example कोई आपके पास आ रहा है सब टीम member and saying कि I'm not able to really get this I'm not able to build this report. Okay, ठीक है. What's the obstacle? Don't dig into the report yourself and see कि अच्छा ये वाला ये गलत किया आपने वो गलत किया. No. Ask the person, what is the biggest obstacle? What did you face? What was the process that you followed? Let the person come up with answers on their own, and that is how the person will really learn. Okay. So let's go through some examples. Okay. Say a team member comes and tells you कि the team member is really frustrated. Okay, and this happens a lot. I do not feel appreciated for my work anymore in this company. Okay. Before advising as a leader, you need to understand what is the questions that you will ask. So I'm giving you 2 minutes. Write down 3 questions you will ask your team member to really clarify as to what his position is. Quickly. 3 questions. Remember, you're trying to understand the person's position and how has it come to that the person is not feeling not appreciated in the company. Done with 3 questions? Okay. Let's come to the second point. The client expresses frustration over repeated queries. Say you are asking for, say आपने आपको बैंक स्टेटमेंट देना था, आपके हिसाब से क्लाइंट के हिसाब से क्लाइंट ने सबमिट कर दिया, but then there are some missing reports in that. Some हो सकता है कुछ dates missing है, कुछ month miss हो गया, and you're constantly asking the documents again and again, and the client is really frustrated that why am I sending the same documents again and again? Okay. How will you tackle this? I've given some prompts. Okay. How do you respond with empathy before jumping to really defend yourself? कि अरे नहीं सर ऐसे क्यों बोल रहे हो यार, कुछ months missing थे इसलिए मैं बार बार पूछ रहा हूँ. आप don't get so mad at me. Instead of defending, how will you tackle this with the right questions? Write those 2-3 questions that you will ask the client. How do you respond with empathy? What is it that you will really say to the client? You know why? One of the important reasons of us also asking questions is when you respond. Okay. So before coming to that, there's a difference between reaction and responding. Reaction is when you quickly react to things. मतलब instant जो आपका आता है, चाहे वो फेस एक्सप्रेशन हो, चाहे वो आपका वर्ड्स हो, सेंटेंसेस हो, दैट्स रिएक्शन. द इंस्टेंट रिप्लाई to anything, that's reaction. Responding is when you think, when you analyze, and then you say or react to your facial expression. That's responding. Now, what happens is when you get into the habit of asking questions and into probing the other person in a positive manner, when you want to understand the situation, you don't react. It's said most of the fights happen because not because of the situation, but because of the reaction. Which means, say for example, I was angry with somebody. I was angry with my husband. I said, कि, "अरे, you don't care about me." And the instant reaction is, हाँ, तुमको तो ऐसे लगता है ये वो, and he got angry. The fight will happen not because of why I feel that way, but because why did the person shout it? So reaction is the root cause of most problems. When you start responding, which means when you start thinking, when you start analyzing and asking questions, why is the other person feeling that way? Excuse me. Why is it happening? Or what is the situation? You tend to avoid a lot of conflicts. So even here, excuse me, when the client is so important, uh, when the client is so important and you feel ki, okay, there is, the client is getting frustrated because of the repeated documentation and you don't want to spoil the relation. The client is in a lot of other zone. ठीक है, उसका अलग काम है, ये आपका मेन काम है, बट क्लाइंट का मेन काम आपको डॉक्यूमेंट्स देना नहीं है. क्लाइंट का मेन काम उसका बिजनेस है. So for him, this will, of course, feel frustrating. First is to understand the person. Okay. So, and ask questions. Why do you feel so? May I ask, uh, did you send the same documents or were they some other period of document? So, क्या होगा? क्लाइंट एक स्टेप पीछे लेके सोचेगा वापस. अच्छा, डॉक्यूमेंट मुझे बैंक स्टेटमेंट ही लग रहा है, लेकिन शायद अलग अलग मंथ्स के थे. ओके. सो रिएक्शन के बदले जब रिस्पॉन्डिंग आता है, even the other person will take one step back and think about. So junior staff, case 3, junior staff avoids taking ownership. मतलब again, like we discussed, the person is just following instruction, but that ownership नहीं हो रहा कि हाँ मेरे से कोई गलती हुई है या तो फिर मैं और improve कैसे कर सकता हूँ काम. Okay. So how can active listening help uncover the defensive response? Ask questions. Understand why is the junior person behaving in such a manner. Okay. Again, giving you 2 minutes, think what kind of questions will you ask to the staff who is not ready to improve the quality of work and is just saying, I just followed the instructions that the person gave, I did not do any mistake. What kind of questions will you ask that person? Okay, done. The last, because we quickly move on, client is silent in the review meetings. होते ना कुछ clients की खाली सुन के चले जाते कि हाँ ठीक है, ये है projection ऐसा है, चलो दे दो, खत्म करो. But that client is really important and you need to upsell the client or make him very, very proactive so that, proactive clients get you more clients. The client who is very outspoken about your quality of work and very conversational with you will get you more clients. So always have those frequent conversations with your clients. तो अगर वो client शांत है, उसको probe करो. कैसे आप questions पूछोगे उसको? Think about it. यहाँ पे I'll give you one task. In the next client meeting, before the meeting itself, this is something that I do regularly. Prepare a list of 5 questions, open-ended questions, which means questions which will make the person think and answer in detail. Prepare a list of 5 questions, such questions to your clients. Okay, this is one action point I'm giving you. And do this with all the client meetings. Okay, so next time, before saying "ho jayega sir," remember, repeat what the person has said. Clarify if there is any doubts that you have. Ask questions. Okay, so you're concerned about this thing. Can I ask what part of it feels the most important? Yeah, so what is the most concerning aspect about it? If you can elaborate, please, this will really help me. Okay. Coming to the part 2 of the communication, that is, how do you structure your conversations better? How do you structure your communication? Because the first challenge, remember, आप technical बातें करते हो, technical reports देते हो. But how do you get that clarity? How do you make the opposite person understand what you really want to say or speak? Let's get to it. The hard truth is, what a CA says is only understood either by CA or भगवान भरोसे. वही समझ सकता है या तो एक CA समझ सकता है. This is something that I've observed. Okay, I'm also a CA, so just some jokes. But the problem is about being more clear and simple in your conversation. Even Jay sir said, simplicity and keeping things short and simple is the best solution. Okay? You might be very impressed with Shashi Tharoor, but at the end, वो क्या बोलते हैं ज़्यादा समझ आता नहीं है. Because it's very complicated. It's not something that every other person will understand. So don't become a Shashi Tharoor. If you become, we'll be very impressed by his communication, his language, his vocabulary. But at the end, when you're talking to your team member, talking to a client, simplicity and clarity will always win. Okay. So, chalo, let's take some example. And this is where I will give you a system of communicating. How do you follow a step-by-step process, a system to communicate what you want to say, technical aspects in a with more clarity? Say a client comes to you and says, can you explain why this GST input tax credit was disallowed to me? Okay. This is a structure that you need to follow. It's a prep structure. Point, reason, example, and reaffirming the solution. Okay. Let's look at the example. Your ITC claim was disallowed because, I will just put this thing. I am not into practice. GST मैंने कभी practice नहीं किया है. So if I'm technically not correct here, please, I ask for forgiveness. But this is something from some technical website I've taken. So please just forgive me if this concept is wrong. But please understand the idea of what I'm trying to say. So first is you take up the point. Yes, your ITC claim was disallowed because then you give the reason why it was disallowed. Because this thing happened. Okay. Next is give them proof. खाली ये हो गया नहीं. Remember, people always want proof. So give them the proof or the example. ठीक है? this was not allowed because this happened, and you can see proof. You can see that this was missing. Okay. And the last point is give them an action point. So now, because this has happened, what will we do is we will reverse the claim and follow up with the authorities. Okay. Remember, people always are not only looking for solution. कोई भी सीए के पास सिर्फ एक कुछ सुनने नहीं आता है, उसको एक solution चाहिए. ठीक है, मेरा आईटीसी डिसअलाउ हो गया, क्यों अलाउ डिसअलाउ हो गया, मुझे वो समझना नहीं है, मुझे आप उसका सोल्यूशन लाके दो. गिव मी द सोल्यूशन और द एक्शन पॉइंट फ्रॉम समथिंग दैट हैज हैपेंड. सो ऑलवेज एंड विथ अ एक्शन पॉइंट और अ टेक अप. ठीक है, सो रिमेंबर प्रेप, पॉइंट, रीजन, एग्जाम्पल विथ प्रूफ, and last is point again with a action. Let's take one more case study. You want to tell your clients that you will be requiring the documents early this year to audit, unlike last year. Okay, I think this is one of the biggest challenge of all the CAs. How will you speak? Chalo, I'm giving you 2 minutes. Quickly try to work on this from this structure. Point, reason, example, point. If structure may, how will you talk to the client? Quickly. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Done? Chalo. We move forward. This is the solution. आगे के case studies में there'll be no solutions. Early document. So you are asking, so you are having a conversation that what we as a firm have are requesting is, if you can this year, please give us the document a bit early. Don't say unlike, because otherwise you are having a personal attack. So please, can you just submit the documents early this year? Why? Why do you now give them a reason? अरे पूछ मत लो, चलो आप जल्दी दो documents. Try to have a good detailed conversation with the client. Why do you explain the reason? Why do you require this documents early? How does this impact your overall working, and the result of the audit? It will be simpler. It will help the client. There'll be lesser to and fro, because then we are not in a hurry, and it's the environment is not stressful, not even for you, not even for our team members. Give them example. Example यहाँ पे क्या होगा is how it has impacted some other client, or proof is give them timeline. Okay, if you submit the documents by this date, it will help us come up with the first, the computation by this date. Any queries will be solved by this date, and the final filing can be done by this date. When this timeline is in place, when there is a proof of point, the client is more influenced. Remember the point of clarity and influence. So when there's clarity of the timeline, the person will be influenced more. Okay. And the action point is, hence, because for the better result, please do, we are giving you a drive link, do, or whatever the system that you follow. If it's, some software, please do upload all your documents here. These are the list of, give them the list of documents required. These are the list of documents that we are giving you. Do submit these documents by this timeline. So it is a very clear action line that you are giving to your client with the proper reasoning. So it's very clear for the client. यही आप सिर्फ बोलते कि from this year we have decided कि आप सारे documents हमें जल्दी दे दो. अरे कब जल्दी दो, क्यों जल्दी दो, what is the outcome, how will it impact? If the client is not clear with this, the person will not get influenced to submit the documents on time. Okay, so next time, don't complain So the client is not giving the documents on time. Give them a timeline, give them an action point, make it very clear for them to follow the instruction. Okay. So moving forward, part 3 and the most important part. Okay, this we'll be discussing in a lot of detail, and there are few case studies that we'll be discussing. And the last 15 minutes we will keep for question answers, because I understand there might be situations where you might feel gaps in communication you want to improve. Okay. The last thing we come on the influence part of communication, and that is how do you talk to different stakeholders? Adapt your communication as per the different stakeholders. How do you do that and why it's important? Your messages a lot of times fail because the expectations of the person is very different from each other. The expectation of a mother will be very different. The way you communicate to your mother, expectation of the mother will be very different. The way you communicate with your spouse, your husband or wife, the expectation is very different. The way you communicate with your child, expectation is very different. You cannot have the same conversation, the same kind of conversation, not even the words. The way you communicate can never be same with two different people, right? Same happens even at the workplace. You cannot communicate in the same manner in even in different situations. Same logo के साथ छोड़ो. Even with a client, in different situations, your way of communicating will be very different, and you need to analyze that before communicating. Remember, clients want simplicity. See, मैंने बोला ना, clients always want simple. They don't want to complicate their life. Okay, they expect कि आप CA हो तो आप मेरी life simple करके दोगे. But अगर आप भी complicate कर दोगे, then the client won't be happy. So always try to simplify the client's life. Team want clarity. The more the team is clear with their goals, with their responsibility, with the timelines, the team will always be better productive, and the communication output will always be better. Authorities want precision. Don't beat around the bush. जब आप authorities के सामने जा रहे हो, they want point to point conversation. Beating around the bush या इधर उधर की बातें नहीं चलती. ये point है तो ये solution है, ये point है तो ये fact है. They want precision. So this is the way you communicate with the different stakeholders. Okay, but with this also lies that even with these clients, like I said, your communication will change as per the different situations that you are in with. Okay. Chalo. Say the company is your firm is coming out with a stricter documentation and processes that you follow in the audits. How does the 3T framework really work? Okay, and how do you communicate using this formula? This is a bit detailed, so please listen to it carefully. Say your firm is coming out with a stricter documentation standards. So how do you communicate this to different stakeholders? Okay, let's look at it. The first stakeholder is your client. अब क्या situation था? The situation, remember the target, when we are talking about the target area, it is the framework, the prep framework will be used here. Okay. Now the client was used to having a very flexible reporting in the sense of कभी भी document submit कर दिया, कैसे भी कर दिया, कभी mail कर दिया, कभी physical दे दिया. So the documentation standards were not very correct. Okay, not very standard, but now the firm wants to change that. So how will you communicate this to your client? Okay, remember, 3 aspects are very important. The target, understanding the target in detail, which means उसका background क्या था, what does the person come with, okay, the thought process that the person might come with, and how will you communicate to that person. The tone means, on a very simple language, आपका बात करने का तरीका, the way you talk, the way you communicate with the client is the tone of your communication. Okay. And the takeaway is, what does the person take away from this whole conversation? What is the action point? Okay. This is the way you will communicate. Now, because of the situation, your tone with the client should be reassuring and advising. Matlab, see, the client is not used to a very strict process. So, अगर आप सिर्फ जाके बोल दोगे, this is our new documentation process, you have to follow this, the client will really get very confused, and the client might shift because that person might not be very comfortable with so many process, या तो documentation or something. You have to reassure the client why this documentation process is important, how will it benefit the person. So the takeaway should be the benefit that the client will get through this smooth documentation process or standard that your firm is setting. Okay, and how firm ko छोड़ो, client को अच्छा पड़ेगा because the compliances then will be timely. Okay, so the structure that you follow in communicating is going back to the prep. Point is, how will you communicate to the client? Let's practice. So, our firm, through a lot of discussion, we have come out that we are coming up with a system jahan pe the process of documentation, that the way we take documents from our clients and the documentation standard that we follow post audit, we are standardizing that. Okay, but reason why we came up with this is because we were seeing that post audit there were a lot of mistakes that were happening because documentations were not in place. So some things we felt later that we missed out, and it impacted not even us, but also a lot of clients like you, where sometimes we missed upon some compliances. So what we want to prep में point हो गया, because the reasoning हो गया. Now example or the action point. So, but we as firm want to reassure that don't worry, we will be explaining the whole process in detail. The team will be there with you through the whole process, explaining all your team members, whoever are responsible for the documentation in detail. And we want to also assure you that once this whole process is set, you yourself will see so many benefits coming out of this, and the whole compliance will seem really easy once all the documents are in place. So that was the reason again, the prep wala R. What I'm doing is I'm understanding the target, I'm walking the person's shoes, I'm reassuring the person that the end result will be good, because understand from the client's perspective कि उसके लिए बहुत भारी हो सकता है. Okay, and then I'm also giving a solution, a action point, a good takeaway for the client. This is how you manage difficult conversations with people. When you understand the person's background, you manage your tone to match the person's background and the emotions of the person. And then you reassure the person with a good actionable point to really help that person trust. Okay. The same thing, let's see how do you communicate with your team member. So you say we are now formalizing the documentation process so that to protect you better in case of scrutiny. So किसी पे ना blame game नहीं होगा. Once the processes are standard, there's no blame game because you are following a process. Don't worry now. Supportive, your tone as a senior has to be supportive and directive. Directive मतलब आपको उनको सही से direction देना है कि इसके बाद ऐसा होगा, इसके बाद ऐसा होगा. There should be a proper way of direction, and at the same time you need to reassure them that we will support you through this whole process, because again the team members now have an added responsibility to learn something new and to adapt to the new process. So it's your responsibility as a senior to support your team members. And once the team member feels supported, the output will be better. Okay. The same thing you need to convey to your other partners. Now, the decision might be made by the founding members or the founding partners of the firm, and now you need to communicate the same to other partners. Strategic and brief. Remember, it's a partner level meeting, so you cannot be supportive or giving a lot of explanations or something like that, and being very this thing. The way you talk to your client and team members, where you are very reassuring and you feel very empathetic. No, with the partners, you have to be very brief, you have to be strategic, and you have to give point to point explanation as to how will this happen and how will you mitigate from the current process to the new process. Okay, it has to be very, very formal. So if you see the way the person is communicating with different stakeholders really changes, because each person comes with a different mindset. Their interest in the situation will be very different, and the work that needs to be done by that person is also very different. So you have to tackle the communication with each stakeholder accordingly. Now let's do this. I'm giving you a case study. I've given you the framework. I want you to take 2-3 minutes of your time. Think, how will you communicate this case to each person? Okay. Now, the case is there has been a delay in filing, 2 day delay from your end in filing. ठीक है, आपके फर्म की तरफ से 2 दिन का डिले हो गया है टू फाइल सम कंप्लायंस. How will you communicate the same to different stakeholders? I've given you the different stakeholders also. Quickly fill in this. Think about it. How will the client feel about this situation? What your tone should be? How will you communicate it to the client, and what is the action point? The same thing, how will you communicate to the other partner? What your tone will be? How will you communicate the same to the tax authority? What are their expectations? Think about all these aspects. Include the system of prep to explain to the target while keeping in mind the tone and takeaway from the whole situation. Okay. I'm giving you 2 minutes to think about it. Okay, let's move forward. I hope you have done this. Now let's see. I'm giving you the solution for this. Now the target or the owner, the target client is the business owner, and remember that person is very frustrated, correct? Because of the whole situation, and it's your mistake. So your tone has to be very empathetic. With that, the client now again उसको sorry नहीं सुनना है या कुछ नहीं. What the person wants is some action plans and reassurance that this won't happen again. Plus, now how will you rectify? Okay. So with the reason, you have to end it with the action plan that you have in mind and reassurance that things like that will not happen. The team now internal juniors understanding अब मिस्टेक की है जूनियर्स ने आप उनसे बात कर रहे हो तो अभी आप क्या करोगे instead of shouting first try to understand what happened why this thing happened problem solving karo your idea should be problem solving and understanding the reason the tone has to be instructional okay now things have happened instruct the team as to how they can improve give them directions and also at the same time be a bit empathetic a bit authoritative empathetic and reassure कि it's okay to have been committed a mistake but this should not happen in future takeaway is go to the root cause and correct the idea should be correction rather than blame gaming okay authority how will you interact with authority is reason out give the reason with action steps the idea should be that your tone has to be of course very formal you cannot go like अरे sir we are so sorry sir आप ऐसे नहीं बोल सकते you have to be formal in the way you communicate with the person you have to represent with the correct facts and supporting evidence as to what happened and now what are the corrective measures that you have planned out okay so if you can see the same situation different stakeholders you have to deal differently it is the way you communicate will really matter okay let's now as we don't have a lot of time what I'll do is we'll go through few of the uh, okay let's discuss this now you at a very during the ongoing audit and because this thing happens a lot okay such cases really happen a lot ongoing audit के time पे you are asking constantly for sensitive and time consuming documents from your client okay how will you communicate how will you tackle this situation and communicate the same with different stakeholders अभी different stakeholders कौन कौन है there is a busy CEO आपका जो main client है CEO है ठीक है आप उसको ये बार बार बोल दो कि मुझे ये डॉक्यूमेंट चाहिए ये रिपोर्ट प्रिपेयर करके भेजो वो डॉक्यूमेंट वहां से निकाल के भेजो ओके and then there is a point of contact आपका POC is your finance manager who is actually submitting the document okay and of course the audit team internally जहाँ पे you are reviewing every work and you are instructing your team to get the documents from them okay and then working on the audit how will you work with each stakeholder on the same situation what your tone should be, what your takeaway should be, and how will you convey the actual message to the person. I'm giving you 2 minutes time. Think about what your tone should be with a busy CEO. What is the expectation of the busy CEO? What kind of conversation does he want to have? What is your tone should be with the finance manager? Again, how will you reason out with him and what other action points you will give to him? How will you direct your audit team? What is the way of communication with them? Remember, the takeaways for each of your stakeholder will be very different. The takeaway for CEO will be very different because he is very frustrated. There are sensitive information that you're asking for. There might be a lot of questions. He might be worried about, how will this impact the whole report. Finance manager के लिए takeaway बहुत different है because at the end he needs to work. He needs to get all these documents, arrange for them with all his regular work that he has to do in the company. Audit team, because you're giving them new work, there are more documents coming in. They need to understand the whole process. There might be some very confusing work coming up. So takeaway for each stakeholder is very different, and you need to manage and speak to each stakeholder very different. Okay, so say you've already filed a return and now there is some data correction, तो आपको revised return file करना है. How will you tackle this situation and with different stakeholders? Yes, the tax officer, the client who's very anxious. Remember, आपने कुछ गलत फाइल किया है, अभी वो रिवाइज जाना है, तो client will be of course very anxious. Angry शायद not, but anxious तो होगा कि रिवाइज हो पाएगा कि नहीं, क्या होगा, will there be a change in the tax? And the team member who's made the error. We have discussed something on these lines, but not exactly the same, because remember, the data correction can be anything. It's not necessarily a mistake, but some change in policy or some change in the compliance or some lesser documentation, something that has happened which is an error and not a mistake. Okay? So अब इसका क्या करोगे? Remember, in situations like these, which are more, see, communication is also very driven by the emotions that emotions in every communication. Okay, that's the main driving force of any conversation that you have. Some conversations are result oriented. The emotion is I want to get some result out. Okay, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आप कोई ऑडिट पे गए हो और आप एक कॉन्वर्जेशन कर रहे हो कि मुझे डॉक्यूमेंट्स चाहिए, द ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड द इमोशन देयर इज आई रिक्वायर दीज डॉक्यूमेंट्स टू कंप्लीट माय वर्क. ओके, सो योर इमोशन इज अथॉरिटेटिव कि मुझे काम चाहिए. Some situations like these, the one that we have in front of us, is very emotional. Okay, it's very emotional for each one of them. किसी ने मिस्टेक किया है, गलती हो गई किसी से, किसी के रिलेटेड गलती हो गई है, तो दैट पर्सन इज वेरी एंशियस एंड वेरी scared कि what will happen. Emotion. Okay, tax officer might not be very emotional in this situation, but even you are emotional because आपके टीम मेंबर से एरर हुआ है, आपके फर्म से एरर. So when the conversation is driven by emotion, your tone matters the most. How do you handle the whole conversation with the right tone will determine the outcome of the conversation. So, which is why we always say what you say does not matter, how you say is the most impactful thing. Especially in emotional situations and personal relations. How you communicate with your spouse, your parents, the tone, the way you speak. You know, parents ne hame hamesha bola hai. Parents always say this. It's the way you speak to us really matter, which means your words are not that hurtful or something, but the tone in which you speak will really change the whole message of the conversation. So remember, in any conversation, be it at workplace or personal space, If the driving force of the conversation is emotion, your tone matters the most. If the driving force is influence, you want to influence the person, you want to get something out of it, your takeaway or the reasoning is the most important part. When the driving force is um, action, मतलब आपको कुछ काम करके चाहिए. Okay, say for example, when you're delegating work, when you want some documents, at that time, clarity is the most important. Okay, so every conversation, you understand the takeaway, matlab the objective of the conversation, what is the driving force, and accordingly see what is the most important aspect of the conversation, whether it is tone, whether it is clarity, whether it is the takeaway. Okay, chalo. Let's recap the steps that you will do when you're having any conversation. First is listen, listen, listen. Listen to understand what the actual situation is before coming up with any solutions, before coming up with anything that, just giving some solution or giving some idea. Listen to understand the crux of the whole situation to come up with the best solution. Then prep your structure. Try to then start prepping what is the point of the conversation, what is the example or what is the explanation you want to give, what is the reason, what has happened, why it has happened, again, what is the action step. To come up with the prep, you will also understand the 3T to tailor it to the audience. What is the target audience? What is the tone that you will keep to understand the emotion that is driving the whole conversation? What is the takeaway that the person wants to listen to really have the most impactful conversation? Once you have these 3T in place, restructure your prep and then communicate what you want to say. Okay? Remember, all your conversations, when you start, and this concept is from a book by Simon Sinek. It is Start with Why. Anything ever, any kind of conversation that you are having with anybody, be it again at your personal space or your professional life or any even strangers, if you start with why am I having this conversation? Why should I have this conversation? How will I have this conversation? And then what is the takeaway? If you follow these steps, you will have the best conversations that you can have. Okay. With that, I'm coming towards the end of the session. I would request Ritu, please, if there is any questions for me, please let me know.
Ma'am, give me 2 minutes. I'm just confirming with the tech team. Actually,
Sure,
I cannot.
no worries. So, if you have any doubts related to, say, the case studies that we solved, or you have any specific challenge to any kind of conversation in general that you have with somebody, you can ask those doubts. If you're still not clear with any concept that we discussed, do ask me, do let me know. I'll help you out with that. Just think about the kind of conversations that you have in your general life, in your office, when you're interacting with your seniors or when you're interacting with your juniors. Any specific point of conversation that is very difficult for you, that is very challenging for you, let me know. one thing that you remember from this whole conversation, remember, is the way you deal with your clients will really, really impact the kind of work that you start getting. Okay. Remember, don't think yourself as just a person who's a service provider who just makes some reports and submits it. You're really not adding value that way. And unless you add value, you will not be paid. That's a hard fact. Okay. Unless and until the person sees that you are irreplaceable and the value that you get on the table, nobody else can. Because your balance sheet कोई भी CA बना के दे देगा. But वो balance sheet से आप क्या लेके आ पा रहे हो? What is the outcome that you are getting? What is the value that you are adding to the whole growth of the client? If you are able to do that, you will become irreplaceable for the client, and the client will come back to you for all the work. And that will happen if you start having conversations. So, not exactly something that's related to this topic or this. This is something that I ask my clients also to do is ask yourself, how many times do you really call up a client and speak to the person? Is it only during the uh, um, during the filing season कि हाँ चलो ये काम है कर लिया खत्म कर दिया पूरे साल you are गायब? Does that happen? Ask yourself this question. So
Ma'am.
there is a question. Yes, Ritu.
Ma'am, I got one query in the chat box. So it is when client does not recognize your hard work and says he is aware of these facts, how to handle this situation?
Okay. Again, the first, uh, remember, यहाँ पे you need not be defensive. Okay. I understand that as a service provider, you will feel कि अरे how can that person put me down, or I'm a CA, I'm a technical person, I will know everything. How can a client tell me that I know everything? The first is to recognize that the client um, is feeling a certain way. Remember, this will happen when you are not trying to prove, um, when you have not proven enough that you are adding value. Okay, that will happen. The client will say, I know everything, because you're not adding your real value. So first is accept that, okay, that person is feeling a certain way. Ask questions. Why do you feel so? Is there some gap that you feel there is a gap in the service? Let the person come up. Because a lot of times, yahi pe clarity mil jayegi कि वो इंसान भी, that person is not very clear. There is just this emotion कि नहीं मुझे सब कुछ आता है and the person is not giving me value. When you always ask questions in terms of facts, if the person is not clear, the person will step back and then give a response ki, okay, I understand you are feeling in a certain way. Let me tell you my side of stories. This is something that I've added value here. This is why I deserve this amount. So first, stop being defensive, ask questions, and then you reply.
So, ma'am, next query is somebody is asking that why we have to all the time. We are
You're
not
not
here-
to make others comfortable.
why we have to make
Okay.
others comfortable all the time. We are not here to make others comfortable. Yeah.
Okay. ठीक है. सुनो सबकी करो अपनी. So उसके लिए first आपको सुनना पड़ेगा. And remember, we all are human. ठीक है. And as a service provider, it is your जो बोलते हैं ना धर्म है. It's our धर्म to service our client. And if you are not servicing your client by listening to them, you will not be able to service them better. So you have to make the person comfortable to really get to the crux of it. If the person has a wall in front of him, सारी चीजें उसके थ्रू नहीं आ पाएगी, वॉल के थ्रू कैसे चीजें जाएंगी? When there is no wall, when the person is comfortable, is when you will get the whole idea of the situation. Okay.
So the next one is, ma'am, should we or should we not pitch our thoughts to our seniors?
Of course you have to, because again, आप नहीं तो वैल्यू नहीं कर पाओगे. यू विल गेट इनटू द कैटेगरी ऑफ कि जो बोल दिया काम कर लिया, यस सर वाले कैटेगरी. ओके. इफ अगेन द सेम थिंग गोज, इफ यू आर नॉट एडिंग वैल्यू टू योर कंपनी, यू आर रिप्लेसेबल. किसी को भी, कोई भी दूसरा, कोई भी फर्म को आपके जैसा सीए मिल जाएगा. लेकिन when you start pitching thoughts, when you start giving value added inputs to your seniors, it is when the person sees you feel the firm is yours, you are accountable for your work, and you are irreplaceable. But yes, the way you pitch your thoughts has to be formal. Understand they are your seniors, and there should be a proper structure in which you are putting the thoughts. You cannot be very, very direct, or the tone cannot be very authoritative.
And in continuation to that, will pitching our thoughts, unless expressly asked from us in an open discussion, makes us sound impatient?
Okay. ठीक है. Good question. The first thing that you analyze in such situation is, be very frank with yourself and ask this question: is my thought really important, or am I just saying for the sake of saying and to come into the limelight of the whole discussion? What is your true feeling inside you? Second, will your thoughts really impact the whole discussion? And then, before asking or putting down your thoughts, seek permission if you are a junior. Do not take a birthright कि मेरा birthright है कहीं भी freedom of speech दिखाना. Okay. There is a level of authority everywhere, so you need to be very careful of where your hierarchy is. Of course, you have the right to speak, but seek that permission and then express your thought. This is what my opinion is. Do let me know if I'm thinking in a correct manner. That is the way you can put your thoughts.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for addressing our queries. With this, as we come close to the today's session, it has been such an honor to be part of this wonderful webcast on Say More with Less and Make It Count Every Time, organized by Professional Skills Enrichment Committee of ICI. On behalf of committee and ICI, would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our speaker, CA Parinita Adukia ma'am, for this enlightening session. A wide round of applause and thanks to organizers, Professional Skills Enrichment Committee, our today's speaker, and other stakeholders made the webcast a memorable one. And finally, I would like to thank you all for being here, and special thanks to committee for giving me this opportunity, and Sambit sir for handling the show. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.